Servants Season 3, Episode 7 was titled Camp. Dorothy works with Veera to get Leanne out of the house, but Jericho and Leanne are more connected than they know. What is going on to all my Servant fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, breaking down the latest episode of Apple TV Plus Servants Season 3. We're all the way up to Episode 7, which was titled Camp. I think this is a very important episode. We see Sean being defiant towards Dorothy. Leanne is absolutely fantastic. And did Dorothy know this whole time about Jericho? We're breaking it all down here in this spoiler review, but before we do so, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, we recently crossed 20,000 subscribers, and I love this community so much, and I want you to be a part of it. So make sure you're subscribed, you're hitting that notification bell. As you all can see on the screen now, if you enjoyed this spoiler discussion, make sure to like this review and also share it to all the Servant fans you know that love this show just as much as we do. And as you all do every single week, go ahead and light up the comment section with your pros, your cons, the deeper meanings, the Easter eggs, the predictions, the theories. What did you all think about this episode, and what do you hope to see in the weeks ahead? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So just briefly, this episode, I know a lot of you all, I read the comments, and again, I appreciate all the support you all give on these videos, and I know some of you all aren't as happy with this season. It's too much of a slow burn. It's not giving us enough answers. It's posing more questions. I hear you. But I'm loving this season, especially this episode. I don't know if you all are really, and again, I don't want to take shots at you all for that, or maybe, not vibing with this season, but I feel the tension. Leanne this season has been absolutely fantastic, and the tit for tat, the tennis match between her and Dorothy this season has never been better. We're going to talk about Sean in this episode. I'm fully convinced that Leanne has definitely put him in some type of trance. There was just so much goodness in this episode, especially as the episode builds on. Again, we're seeing Dorothy and Leanne going back and forth, tit for tat. Leanne wins this round, Dorothy wins this round, but we all know who ends up winning at the end of this episode. I thought this was just a fantastic episode. The writing was great. The direction was fantastic. I was very pleased with the episode. But again, I want to know your pros, your cons, and everything in between in the comments below. So you all ready? Let's break it all down as we open up with Sean, who has his new commercial and he's going to take the job. And I think like I said last week, it was like, I could understand if he was leaving the state, but knowing that it was in Philadelphia, you got to take this gig, right? Sean, as he talks about this commercial, that his parents didn't care. He was homeless, which we've talked about in the past. Yes, Sean was homeless, which makes me go back to my theory a couple weeks ago. Was he maybe a part of some type of cult, some type of following? And also, are we going to ever meet his parents? But again, he was homeless at the age of 17. And we have the show, which is Gourmet Gauntlet in Philadelphia. And yeah, get the F out my kitchen if you're not about that. The commercial, actually the comedy in this episode was pretty well sprinkled. And the show does a really good job of throwing in these kind of like out of pocket, kind of left field jokes that just fit so perfectly within its home. But let me know if you all think Sean's gourmet business will take off, because as we see in this very next scene, Leanne continues to boost his ego, talking about this will be the biggest gig of this program, of this network of all time. And I love, again, notice I'm going to take mark. Let me know in the comments how many times I'm going to mark this here. Leanne wins this little tit for tat round one when she says to Dorothy, when Dorothy's like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you, Sean. And we hear Leanne say, are you, Dorothy? Which, by the way, the fact that Sean or Julian or Dorothy herself didn't address her for kind of, speaking at her out of tongue is something to speak about. And I don't know if they just didn't hear Leanne, but I thought it was pretty loud the way she said, are you happy for him? And she even said this a couple weeks ago. So round one goes to Leanne in this tit-for-tat tennis match. But again, it's in this moment we see Dorothy taking her brother Julian outside and kind of expressing her feelings about, I know what you and Leanne have been doing. I don't know how she knows besides the cameras maybe being in the house, but I was under the assumption that Julian and Leanne haven't had sex since the beginning of this new season, but maybe they had a hookup or something of that nature, or she just can tell, right? The sexual tension between those two, but she does address that she knows and she wants him to stop this immediately. She even goes and tells him about her memory loss from last year, attesting that to giving birth to Jericho, and she goes into telling him about the attack that Leanne had, but more importantly in this conversation, she wants Julian to stay away from her, at least in the sense of stop having sex with the nanny, right? But again, it is just important to note, Leanne versus Dorothy in this episode, as Dorothy's trying to, get all of her people on her side, but things are starting to sway to Leanne's point. But as we go on, again, this Leanne versus Dorothy conversation is so interesting, as Dorothy wants Leanne to stay away from the park because of obviously the homeless people. She doesn't feel safe. She doesn't feel comfortable with Leanne being around them, especially for the sake of Jericho's safety. And then she goes on to bring up this quote, which actually I love this callback later in the episode. Leanne, do you notice this pattern of history you have with groups of people, with a cult? Remember that line, as Leanne assures her that she shouldn't be too concerned because we all know who's leading those homeless people. It's Leanne, so she knows she's safe, which we'll get into a little bit later. But the passive aggressiveness attitude from Leanne is absolutely fantastic, as Dorothy goes on to say she just wants trust amongst one another, right? As we all know, they're all holding different secrets to each other, even Dorothy herself, but she wants to establish this trust. She wants to be able to talk amongst each other, and she even mentions that she knows about the relationship between Leanne and Julian, and Leanne doesn't like the idea that she's been kind of snooping around in her belongings, because that's what the Lesser Saints used to do to her. So again, I'm going to go ahead and give maybe this kind of tit for tat to Dorothy, because she's establishing herself like, hey, these are the rules. I'm setting the rules. Follow the rules. And we see those rules are broken a little bit later. So I guess we can give that round to Dorothy. As we move on, of course, the very next scene, we see Dorothy goes into her belongings, and we get a very, very huge moment as far as what she finds in Leanne's belongings. Let's break it all down. She finds the drawings of all the freak accidents that have taken place so far this season, from the seagulls, the beehive, the finger, and there are several drawings of Jericho himself, and there's a drawing of Sean, cooking. There's a drawing of, we got Julian in there. We also have Dorothy herself in there, and the picture of Dorothy. After all of that disturbing stuff she might have found, the only one that really kind of struck a nerve with her as she's talking to Sean at this point is the one with her, obviously, and her breast leaking. So this journal, again, kind of speaks to the manifestation that, we've seen Leanne be able to bring to life with all the different accidents and things that happened so far. So again, this power, where it stems from, it's growing. And as I mentioned many, many weeks ago, Leanne is now starting to cross over more and more over to the dark side. She's starting to become the leader of this household, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But moving on, I have to admit, I am 100% convinced that Sean is under some type of spell, some type of something that Leanne, maybe it goes into the book that she drew. There's something that she has over him, because as we're having this conversation between Sean and Dorothy, as Dorothy has shown him the pictures at this point, as well as she mentions the attack that Leanne had in their very house and in the back of their home, he doesn't seem concerned at all. So again, it makes me wonder, as I mentioned last week, is Sean going to become a follower of Leanne? And we're going to talk about that at the end of this video, but I am really under the assumption that there is something going on with Sean. It's not just the Nancy going to church thing. Leanne has done something to this man to make him become a believer. And again, I said last week, when you push him away from his religious beliefs, he's going to go find religion and belief in someone else, and that someone seems to be Leanne. Sean assures her that they are safe and that, things are now good. I'm successful. You should be happy for me. We're safe. We're good. Can't you just be happy, as Sean tells her? Ooh, this house is falling apart, as we see, literally falling apart, foundationally falling apart, but this relationship is also falling apart. Leanne pays a visit to the park in the next scene against Dorothy's wishes. She's gifted a very interesting looking necklace, and this is where we hear the homeless people saying, oh, Jericho, he's so beautiful. He's a miracle. And while all this is going on, we notice that Roscoe is there to see what's happening. He asks one of them, what is it that's so special about her? And he tells her she's extraordinary, she's courageous, she is a rebel against anyone that goes against her, which again, we keep seeing Roscoe pop up, but I'm just like on the fence. Has he been converted? Has he been affected by Lesser Saints? Who hired him to kind of observe Leanne? Is this Julian's payroll? Is this maybe somehow Dorothy involved? Is it someone else entirely? Roscoe, I can't wait to get the reveal of why he's just spying on Leanne, but those key words, again, seeing why they believe in her so much is very important. So meanwhile, we see Dorothy sees that Leanne has Jericho in this park, and she is not happy. She runs outside, grabs Jericho and has this conversation with Leanne. And remember the tit for tat, the tennis match. And I'm going to go ahead and give the point to Leanne as they're having this conversation. As we see Dorothy's obviously upset, Leanne tells her, "You're so controlling, like Aunt May." That's a pattern of behavior, right, Dorothy? I'm like, yo, Leanne, I'm loving this new side of her. Again, it is very dark. It's very sinister. I'm very acknowledging that, but I'm loving it. And again, go ahead and give that point to Leanne as we move on. As Dorothy pretends to go upstairs, she listens into the conversation between Leanne and Sean. They want to learn from me. Sean asks, why do they test her? And she says, because maybe I deserve it. Again, she's taking all the praise, all the good stuff that she's getting from the homeless people. And again, she's winning the match so far. Keep that tally down in the comments. As we move on, in come the reinforcements. And remember last week, I'm like, where's Veera? I hope she doesn't just disappear and fall off the planet of the earth in this show. Well, she is back. And as we see, Dorothy has her talk to Leanne about this dance camp that's in New Jersey. And I love this. Again, the jokes, always try to catch the little funny moments in the show. When Sean's about to go to work, he looks at Dorothy. What's going on here? She says, you can either leave or shut up. Again, controlling. We know she's very controlling. But I am someone that appreciates great acting. And I don't know if you all noticed the eye contact. It's all in the eyes without verbally saying anything. The way that Dorothy, or I should say Leanne, was looking at Sean in regards to, help me, Sean. And Sean looking at her like, I can't. It's Dorothy. That eye contact was so incredible, and the acting in this scene is incredible. It spoke so loudly about their relationship and who's in control, at least at this point of the household. And we see that he ultimately leaves the house, leaving Leanne to fend for herself. Leanne, her vulnerable side is so well put together, is so well, drawn out, fleshed out. I love this moment here because, again, she doesn't say one word. You notice that she's starting to tear up because this is the family she wants. This is the mother she wants, and they're pushing her, or at least Dorothy at this point is pushing her away. Again, look at that scene. Fantastic acting. It's all in the eyes. And Dorothy says, all you have to say is yes. And notice she didn't even give Leanne a chance to say anything. She's like, go ahead and just say yes. And she doesn't say anything. She just kind of, looks like a little sad puppy. And we see Dorothy's like, oh, go ahead. I booked your ticket for the train and you'll be going, this weekend. And we see Veera say, well, the classes don't actually start till Monday. And Dorothy's just like, well, she can get a head start. Point goes to Dorothy on that round. Keeping track, let's continue going. Dorothy tries to give her a dress, but Leanne denies it, unlike she did with that necklace. She doesn't want anything from Dorothy because Dorothy's going to want something from her a little bit later. Sean is told by Dorothy, who isn't comfortable with Leanne being around. There's no questions at all. Dorothy wants her out of the house. We even see her snap at Sean, vocally cursing at him. You're going to listen to me. I need a partner. And that's the end of it. Again, she's in control for now, and Dorothy is truly the head of this household. Cut to Leanne putting her new necklace on as we see her doing her dance routine around the house. She makes her way to the basement. We see she moves away where the sinkhole is, and the water is starting to bubble. We know what that means. Something bad is on its way, and we're going to get to that here. Next day, as Julian burst in to share his opinions on the matter, which he thinks is a terrible idea. Notice who's crying during this whole conversation? Jericho. Very important to note that there, as we see Dorothy giving her tickets. Leanne kisses Jericho goodbye, and notice immediately he stops crying. As he walks away from Leanne, he starts crying again as Veera puts him in his high chair. Very interesting stuff going on here. As Leanne hugs Sean and hugs Julian, gives him a kiss on the head, and she hugs Dorothy. It's a very kind of long hug, right? It was almost like, like they say, the kiss of death. This is almost like the hug of death, because as we see here, Dorothy is telling her, oh, you're going to love it. You're going to have a good time. And we move on to the moment that we all knew was coming sooner rather than later. And here it is. Dorothy screams, baby Jericho is now a doll again, ladies and gentlemen. That moment there was fantastic. The way they kind of put that into the moment. The tension is so fantastic. And Dorothy says she can't do this again. She can't do this again. That's, to me, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, that's acknowledging that she realizes that she was treating this doll like Jericho. It's all come back together. Was she fully aware of this trance and this kind of state that she was in last year? Is she like just like, I'm tired of, I can't do this again, like I can't, maybe, and now I'm saying this, maybe she was saying I can't do this again because obviously we know last year Jericho was kidnapped. So is she saying I can't do this again, like the idea of my son being kidnapped? Or was she acknowledging this is the doll that I was treating like a human child in Jericho? Let me know which one. I'm starting to, the more I think about it, I'm starting to think that she meant more of like, I can't take the idea of him being gone from me again, versus she's acknowledging that she killed Jericho and she was treating that doll like him. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. As we move on, she hears the baby crying in the basement, which we know that the baby isn't there. Notice that the crown is cracking, all due to Leanne. We hear him upstairs and notice that Leanne's outside at this point as all this is going on. She's not in the house to protect them. Cut to Sean finding the balloon ribbon, which I'm pretty sure that's a callback to season 1, episode 10, which happened to be called Balloon, which was the same episode that Jericho came back. As we move on, Dorothy is upstairs running around and Sean takes that same ribbon over the doll and begins to pray over it. As we move on, Leanne tells Toby he should go as Dorothy finds insects where Josephina was. I'm assuming that at this point she's been in that room and that wall so much that she's just disintegrated to these insects. With being there so long, Leanne is now back in the house. And Dorothy yells at her, "Where is my son? You know what I'm capable of," as she's starting to, she's stating all the physical abuse she did to Leanne in regards to, you know what I'm capable of, kind of showing her dominance in this situation, as she tells her he's in his crib. He's been there the whole time, and he is no doubt in the crib, fine and well dandy, and it's all due to Leanne being back in his house, protecting her family. Now, if they couldn't put two together, if they can't put two and two together at this point, I don't know what I'm going to do, because it's just like, it's so apparent, guys. You're dealing with some supernatural, unworldly stuff. I'm going to need Julian. Sean already he's believing in Leanne. Dorothy, you're going to have to put the pieces together. You're going to have to figure it out, because she even says, oh, she had the nerve to have someone kidnap my son and put this doll here. Like, no, we're not dealing with no grounded reality stuff. This is very supernatural. Get to the program, ladies and gentlemen. As we move on, Julian is told by Leanne that he doesn't need to fix anything. He's not broken. Remember, she was the one that saved Julian last year. I wonder, is there any connection between her doing that? And also, I don't want to leave out, it's official that Julian broke up with Veera in this episode, so I don't know if we're going to get her anymore in the rest of this season. But moving on, and remember my Sean becoming a believer comment and maybe a member of Leanne, as he finally, for the first time I can remember, he goes against his wife's orders. He tells Leanne, on behalf of myself and my wife, we apologize. You're more than welcome to stay here as long as you want. I think Leanne has a new follower. Not only she has her homeless people, she now has Sean on her side. She might have Julian coming soon, and the only person that's rebelling against her at this point is Dorothy herself. Point match Leanne. I love the shot of her walking upstairs as Dorothy's looking up at her. I think Leanne's won the match, and I think it's safe to say Leanne is the head of this household. What an incredible episode. I want to take the time to applaud the writer of this episode, Cara Lee Corthan, and the directors, Corleen Held and Logan George. Applaud. That was a fantastic written episode, directed episode. Leanne is running this house now. I believe Sean is going to be a follower of her now if he wasn't already somehow associated with the homeless cult. Julian, I think, is just a matter of time if he's not already been, converted into being a believer. Leaving Dorothy to fend for herself. Veera's gone. Who is she going to get now? Is she just going to follow suit, or is she going to continue to push back? I think it's safe to say we know Dorothy's going to push back, but how far will it push her out of her own damn house? Only time will tell. I love this episode. I love the little Easter eggs. I'm loving the reveal. Does Dorothy know that she was pretending that doll was her child, or was she referring to it being kidnapped? So much goodness. I loved it. I can't wait to see what episode 8, 9, and 10 has up its sleeve. I enjoyed this episode, but I want to know your thoughts, pros, cons, thoughts, theories, your Easter eggs, your deeper meaning behind certain scenes. Let's talk about it all in the comments. I appreciate every single one of you all for watching this review. Before you leave, make sure if you haven't already to like, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and come join this community. It's such a fun community. I want you all to be a part of it if you're not already, so subscribe and hit that notification bell. Again, I hope you enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe, as you can see on the screen now. Subscribe to the channel and come and join the community. Check out my other content, my Batman review, spoiler free. Check it out. See you all on the next video.